weekend wrap. Sorry, g'day everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. A big night ahead of us, lots to talk about. Our deep dive, of course, with Matty Roberts being the point of discussion this week. So without any further ado, why don't we just get straight into it? Oh, good evening, everyone. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Crowcast tonight. Another big Tuesday Night Live coming at you. Thanks to everyone who's joined us in the chat on Discord. And g'day to my partner in crime on Tuesday nights, Peter. How you going, Peter?
I'm well, Fiend. Very well indeed. I was a little bit concerned there when you said the weekend wrap. I was about ready to log off. I thought I was going to have to start punching it out with Macca and Nikki, and you know that's not my bags.
No.
I'm about to. I'm very much a TNL kind of guy, so I was about ready to log off. But anyway, all good, mate. And yourself? Good?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Thanks, mate. It's good to be a Crows fan at the moment, isn't it, this week?
It was good, and certainly some very good work by you on YouTube. The video that you put out there, that was fantastic. It's incredible to see the room at the moment, seeing a whole lot of new people there. So fantastic to see all the new people there, as well as the old regulars. But that was a lovely little bit of work on the YouTube video, mate. That last time I checked, it was over 4,000 views.
Yeah, no, it took off a little bit. It was a spur of the moment thing because I was so pissed off with all the tears. It's like, stuff you guys. Let's fight back a little bit. So, but look, it's brought a few people, or brought our show in front of a few more people, which is fantastic. That's what we want. If you are watching on YouTube or Twitch or listening on Spreaker or on iTunes on demand, make sure you get around us on Discord. The links and invites to Discord are on the descriptions of the various platforms, and it's usually a pretty lively discussion, Peter, not only during our shows, but also, of course, on game day. The game day chat is really going off these days, and I know you've recently discovered it, and it's a good companion to watching the footy.
Yeah, it really is. So I jumped into it on the weekend because it was. I was at the footy and I was actually in the pocket. I was right where that the Murray infamous handball went to. So I was right
handballing
there,
to you, was he?
It was just, I was calling for it, but admittedly I was I think I was about 4 points and a bourbon to the good, and it was a very, very exciting time. But yeah, it certainly encouraged the chat. It was good to see everybody. And what I like, Fane, is very, very positive. It's all good, positive stuff. There's no.
It is. There's no melting going on, unlike some other platforms that we won't mention. But it is a good time on a game day to get around the chat. Now, look, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8 people in the audience. And Tuesday night's all about interaction. So if you've got something to say about the weekend, or if you've got something to say about anything that we talk about tonight, or if you've just got something to say in general, stick your hand up, and we'd love to have you on to have a chat with us while we're doing our podcast. Now, Peter, just speaking quickly about the weekend, I always like to get your thoughts on it. We prattle on about it for 7 or 8 hours on a Sunday night, but what do you think about the weekend?
Oh, look, it was just one of those games that you pay your membership, and if you get one game like that a year, you're happy, really, aren't you?
Yeah,
regardless of how your team's going. I mean, it was just such an what I really thought about it is, just as a supporter, it was just an entertaining game of football. It was pretty high scoring. Both scored fairly freely, and I thought both teams played a good brand of football, and it was just one of those. There was never more than 2 or 3 goals in it all the way, and it was just thoroughly entertaining. I thought it was really quite a high standard too.
It's very high standard, actually.
I was in the chat for a little bit on Sunday, and I heard Nikki saying it was a bit of an ugly win. I really didn't think it was. I thought there was some really quite nice football played. I thought that
Agreed.
we did them on the outside. Really, if you look at the stats and what Matty Nick said in his presser, it was a case of saying, look, we accept that Oliver and Petrarca are going to get a whole stack of clearances.
Yeah.
So we're going to sit back and try and use the ball, get hold of the ball, and use it almost a little bit of the old Hawthorn, and try them that way. And we certainly belted them in uncontested ball, as you'd know.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was a really entertaining game to watch, and now whether that was the 4 pints and the bourbon, I don't know, but it was good. It was good fun, good fun night at the footy.
No, you know what? I agree with you. I was dead cold sober, so I can confirm that even without the bourbon, it was good to watch. And I agree. Our transition work changed substantially. And the thing, I guess, on reflection, thinking about it today, actually, it surprises me, and maybe it was a little bit arrogant by Goodwin and his coaching panel that they just allowed it to be a end-to-end shootout, really. At no stage did they try to shut us down or to try and push up and really clog up the middle of the ground where a lot of the ball was being contested. They were quite content to let the ball ping from one end to the other and rely, I guess, on their perceived midfield strength and their tools, etc., to do the job. And I just felt like Simon Goodwin sat back and let it all unfold, whereas our coaching panel, I think, were more proactive, certainly in the planning stage and on game day itself.
Certainly had a smell of it will work out in the end. I think that was what it seemed like to me, because I was the same as you. I was waiting for some kind of structural, but I think that because they were, they got to within 3 goals in, 3 goals in. You must have thought at that point, 3 goals in front with a few minutes to play, 7 minutes to play, that they were home.
Yeah, I did mention at some stage during the first half in the game day chat that I felt like Melbourne were playing like millionaires. And I think they warmed to the cause in the second half, particularly Petrarca and Oliver were outstanding. But Melbourne's are a team, I think, that again they fall away in their bottom half a dozen in their team, and they needed a couple of those players to stand up, and they didn't, and it was left to too few for Melbourne. And whereas when you look at Adelaide's stats and just the sniff test, it was a very even team performance.
Yeah, it was.
Yep. So a few things to talk about tonight. First of all, we can talk about injuries, and there's really no change. In fact, our injuries, as they stand at the moment, they're all long-term.
They're all long-termers, and I was looking at it today, actually, and you're right, they're all long-term, and I'm not sure that selection's got a lot to talk about tonight. I mean, there'll be things to talk about, but it's there's nobody sort of, apart from Will Hamill, had a great game in the Sandful.
Yeah. Well, we might spend a moment on the Sandful, actually, in a moment, because there were a couple of good performances. But, we've got Talia set back by a week because he was crook, so he hasn't had the training load that they would have liked this week, so he's still listed as 3 to 4. Lockie Gallant, still 3 to 4. Lockie Murphy, you would think, would struggle to get back in, 7 to 8 listed. Tommy Lynch, similar, 7 to 8. Matty Crouch, even less of a chance, I think, of playing again this season after that groin surgery. So that's listed as 8 to 10, but I think that's a bit optimistic. They might put him on ice. And we got Mitch Hinge and Wayne Miller, of course, season-ending injuries. Just touching on Matty Crouch, Pete, what's your feel? He's coming up for free agent. Well, he's free agent this year, and contract talks on hold and all that sort of stuff. And now he's missing out for the rest of the season. What's your feel? Oh, Pete might have gone missing. Well, Pete's sorting himself out there because, Peter, if you can hear me, I can't hear you. Oh, he's gone. I wonder what people in the chat feel. My personal view is that the club want to keep Matt Crouch. I think they see him as integral to our future. Pete's back.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I don't know what happened.
No, you're right. You're right. Did you hear my question? I was just asking you what your feel was with regards to Matty Crouch, Pete, given the contract status at the moment.
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? And look, I think that obviously he's got that injury, and the extent to which you wanting him to get back onto the park, or even that he wants to get back on the park, is really, really hard to know. And it's just hard. It really, really is hard to place where that relationship is and what his intent is for next year. There's obviously been no talk that we've certainly heard of about the contract negotiations and where that all stands, but it's hard. It's hard not to believe that the whole thing in some way is interrelated. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. Look, I don't know. My gut feel is that they'd like to keep him, but they will keep him at a price that they are comfortable with. You'd struggle to know what Matty Crouch would be worth in the open market at the moment. I don't think he'd fetch as much as Brad. So again, we'd probably be looking at band 3 or whatever. If you're looking at band 3, is it worthwhile going there, or do you just match? Or it's interesting because go on.
I was going to say, look, I'm on record for him. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I'm on record as I'd rather retain him. I don't really want to lose him because I just think that we've got too much of a gap, particularly of midfielders in that sort of 100 or so games. And I think you can't afford to lose a 2013 top 20 draft pick.
Yeah. I agree. Interesting to see where he slots back in, given our midfield structure at the moment with a couple of inside players. And what we're lacking, as we've spoken about previously, is the outside silks, which Matty really isn't. So, he gets a lot of it. And when he's in good form, he distributes well. But when he's struggling physically or form-wise, he can turn into a bit of a liability fairly quickly because of his lack of pace and probably not as strong as his brother inside the contest. So that's going to be interesting to watch that one play out. The other thing, of course, is Tribunal. Now, we'll have a look at the broader VFL Tribunal in a minute, but could you believe that I can kind of understand that Tech's got a $2,000 fine, but Darcy Fogarty getting fined $2,000 for giving Jake Lever a tap on the shoulder? That was a bit rich.
Extraordinary. It was just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
And you're caught between a rock and a hard place because obviously you're not going to you're not going to contest that. You're just going to cop it on the chin. But gee whiz, $2,000. I've said no. There was worse stuff in the crowd that got let go by the stewards. So I don't know.
Didn't mind Texas, but I didn't like that. I didn't like Darcy's at all.
Yeah. Look, to be honest with you, I think Tex actually did really well because he could have absolutely poleaxed Oliver. He had him on toast, and he did put him down into the dirt, but it didn't seem to me to be a double action. And it certainly wasn't a sling. It was just a hard tackle that ended up with Oliver being a little bit worse for wear for about 30 seconds. And then it kind of lit a fire under him and he went ballistic after that. So I said on Sunday night we should maybe find Tex a bit more for knocking some sense into Oliver because I think he'd only had 8 possessions up until that clash and then he went ballistic.
So no, I think he did well, and it was a reasonable decision.
Yeah, I think so. The interesting ones were in other matches. The Lockie Plowman 2-match ban for rough conduct on Jaeger O'Meara. They upheld that. So he serves his 2-match ban. Marlon Pickett's ban for striking stands as well. The one now, which was the one that was the rundown tackle from behind? Because that's the one that I couldn't understand.
Holman from Gold Coast. Yep.
Yeah. So let's just see. I've just got the live blog up on AFL. So the AFL are arguing that there was a second movement in Holman's tackle that makes it dangerous. After pinning the midfielder and preventing an effective kick, Gleeson then suggests it's open to you to conclude that it's the rest of the tackle that is the problem. Now, we've all played footy. Most of us that are listening have played footy. If you run someone down from behind and try to tackle them, you're pretty much out of control at that point because you're so off balance. I don't see how Holman could have purposely, initiated a second movement to drive him into the ground. I just thought it was a tackle.
Well, I guess you can get into all of the specifics of the intent and it being. I think it was graded as careless and rather than intentional. And once you get into that careless and really at the end of the day, this is I think we can sum it up by saying it's a result-driven system that we've got now, and that is that if somebody, it's almost regardless of the action, that if somebody ends up with a concussion, you are in the gum, and effectively the bar for carelessness is so low now. Effectively, if you initiate any kind of contact, whether that be a tackle, whether it be a bump, and as a result of that contact, there is a concussion, which leads to a player having to generally taking no further part in the game, you are done. You are toast. There's very, very little wriggle room anymore. Very, very hard to see any kind of situation whereby you initiate any kind of contact, tackle or bump, but we see a punch to the face because it's just a punch to the face. That's or a fine, and that's actually a really that's a violent act.
Yeah, and intentional.
That's where we are. Yeah, we're at that stage.
I can cop the duty of care with the bump. That's taken a bit of getting used to, particularly the accidental head clashes. That's still murky, if you ask me, but I can deal with that. But a situation like Holman's, and his defence is basically, there was no spinning, there was no second movement, there was, no slinging, no excessive force, no pushing to the ground. I mean, it was a tackle. And if they're going to start to officiate the tackle out of the game, then we're 10 years away from touch football, aren't we?
Well, I'm not going to argue that with you. We're going down a very, very slippery road. There's no question about that.
Yeah,
but that's where we are. And we had discussions 12 months, 2 years ago, Fane, about the whole issue of concussion.
Yeah,
and the claims that are coming and the claims that we know are coming.
Yeah,
and really, this is about risk mitigation now for the AFL.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I'm not. I know they're publicly available, but I haven't read through the CBA and player contracts and all the rest of it. But you would imagine it's surely, and you'd know better than me, Peter, but surely if you participate in an activity, there's a certain amount of acceptance of risk as well, particularly circumstances that evolve from accidental incidents. And I understand the desire to protect players and to promote the game as a game that's safe to play. I get all of that. But at some point, you'd think, well, the sport is dead in 10 years' time. I mean, blokes even get hit in the head with bloody golf balls and die. Without being callous about it, shit happens.
The old voluntary assumption of risk, which really that's an area of the law that applies. Sorry, I'm probably going to bore the listeners now, but
no, that's fine.
It's really more applicable in the lower grades, because particularly when you're playing amateur football, because what's your voluntary assumption of risk? Standing there and getting king hit, you're not expecting that really on a football field, and you shouldn't, and you should be able to charge that person with assault. The problem that you've got is the AFL has become such a professional league that we're now actually we're entering into the sphere of workplace
safe
relations.
Workplace,
And we're talking about work practices and employment law, and so it's a completely different area of the law.
Yeah.
And so then under Commonwealth legislation, then the AFL's got an obligation to provide a safe workplace, and that's where we're at. And the litigation that will flow against the AFL will be workplace-related litigation.
Yeah. And, I mean, without steering too much off the track and boring people to death, it makes you wonder whether there needs to be another category for sports entertainment within that workplace legislation, because me going to an office and sitting down and banging away on a computer, the only risk that I've got is falling asleep. Whereas, blokes that are playing football or women that are playing football or people that are playing any sport, really, even though they're doing it professionally and they're doing it for money, ultimately they're pursuing an interest at a professional level and, taking up the game and pursuing it to the extent of trying to get drafted. You would have thought that there was a certain amount of acceptance of risk associated with those actions. So, but I'm no lawyer, and we're probably boring people to death. People, don't forget, if you are in the audience, don't be shy. Tuesday night's all about interaction. So if you have got something to say on that topic or any other topic on the tribunal or anything else related to football, stick your hand up and we'll get you on. And we always like to have people on having a chat. Now, Peter, the other thing that I wanted to talk about just quickly was, even though we've done it to death, I just want to have a brief chat to you about that deliberate out of bounds, because, discussions along the way have, highlighted the fact that the rule is actually no longer deliberate out of bounds. The rule now is insufficient care or insufficient intent to keep the ball in. Now, Tom Brown, and I was going to do a parody of Tom Brown with just the top of his head on camera, because he's a little snotty short ass. But he's came out on Twitter and said it doesn't matter that the ball deflected off Spargo's hand. It's all about the intent. Now, I went and read that rule, and whilst I don't think he's right, I also don't think he's necessarily wrong either. Because Murray was the last person to dispose of the ball. The deflection was incidental, so you could argue that the rule should be adjudicated based on the last disposal action, which was Murray's. It doesn't really specify, last person to touch it. So is that a grey area that should have been foreseen and has now led to all this acrimony?
I think it's definitely a grey area, because when that all started coming out, I didn't know what the actual rule was, and so and how much that would impact the AFL's decision. I mean, look, I have a very, very strong opinion that what the AFL doing, if we're talking about creating unsafe workplaces, I have a really, really strong opinion on the AFL going down this path of releasing decisions about umpire decisions during the game and hanging them out to dry publicly. I think that if a club wants to query it and the AFL want to answer that query confidentially, then that's all very good. And if they want to do that behind closed doors to coach the umpire, then that's all well and good. But to hang these guys, and it's not just this one, Fiend, it is, there was the holding the ball for Brisbane and Geelong, and I reckon there was another one as well. I can't quite remember, but, who is this actually serving? What good is this doing the game? Is it making anybody fit? The only thing this serves to do is to hang the umpire out to dry. And if they're talking about trying to attract umpires to the game, how does this? I mean, why would you get into umpiring when your employer will hang you out publicly? For what reason? Oh, I think it's outrageous. But anyway, and also, you could go back. I mean, if they're going to do that, then why don't they just go through and say, well, look, these are all the decisions he got correct. He could have made 99 decisions that were absolutely spot on Saturday night, and he's going to get hung out publicly because of one. I think it's disgraceful.
Yeah, I mean, again, you make the observation that it's a workplace. Now, if I go and have a performance review with my employer, my employer is not going to focus on one thing that I did wrong. My employer is going to, if they're conducting a review properly, they're going to look at my performance as a whole. And whilst there might be opportunities for learning and training and all the rest of it, there's also going to be opportunities for providing praise and rewarding effort, etc., performance. So, as an employer, you would 100% you would think that the AFL have failed the umpiring fraternity in the way that they handle these things. I agree. Coincidentally, they just appointed a new umpires director or umpires coach during last week, I think, or maybe the week before. Welcome to the job. We're just going to hammer you.
No purpose.
None whatsoever. Well, what it does is it feeds the media train. And again, it underpins the assertion that the AFL is an entertainment industry.
Yep. Totally agree.
And will basically eat their own. I have more sympathy for the umpires, maybe not in the moment, because there's plenty of times where I can't believe a decision that they've made. But when you sit back and you actually look at it holistically, you think the amount of rules and the amount of grey areas in the rules that we've touched on plenty of times make the game impossible to officiate. But instead of the AFL recognising that fact, they come out for no particular reason. They're not going to change the result. They're not going to award consolation prizes. So there's absolutely no reason why, like you said, of coming out and saying, oh, yeah, we got that one wrong, particularly when there's no real discussion about why they got it wrong. It's just a small statement saying, we're sorry, the umpire got it wrong. Murray should have been paid deliberate. So, well, why? Because we've all seen the angle that shows that the ball deflected off Spargo at about 30 to 40 degree angle. There's an argument to be made that ball, had it not hit Spargo, would have gone to grass in front of Duday and wouldn't have even gone out of bounds. So what is the thinking? Why are you coming out and saying that ball was deliberately out of bounds? It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's ridiculous.
Anyway, let's not dwell on that. Right, let's talk quickly about the SANFL, Peter. It was on the telly on the weekend, so we had an opportunity to watch it.
Not a great performance, but certainly the shining light was Will Hamill, who went back to the SANFL with a terrific mindset and was named best. And I think he picked up 30 odd possessions or something like that, and gave us tremendous run and drive. And he's obviously a class above SANFL level, and I take my hat to the mental strength of Will to go back and perform like that. Is that's what you want to see. That's fantastic. I fear for him that just at the moment, Chase Jones has just stepped into that role at the moment, and they're going to give Chase a few games to see whether he's got it in that role. So I feel that Will's kind of just lost his spot there for the moment, but I'm sure he'll be back. The other couple of performances that were pretty good was Andy McPherson came back and played pretty well around the midfield area.
Yeah, he did.
And also Josh Worrell again, having another game. But you've got really at the moment it's crazy. You've got three defenders there that all played really well. Probably not surprising, I guess, given the result. But so all the pressure on the defenders, and they played pretty well on Saturday evening. And just in terms of, I guess, if that just flows through to selection, Fiend, I'm racking my brain. I really can't see where there's going to be any unforced changes or forced changes, to be honest, from that lineup on Saturday.
It appears at this stage as if everyone's pulled up, and after such a stirring win, you would expect them to go in unchanged. I think if I was to be, I really would like to get Josh Worrell into the team for a taste, and I think there's a case to be made for, depending on matchups, either rotating him and Nick Murray out. We've got Richmond next week. So Richmond, we're going to have to contend with two tools, Jack Revolt and Tommy Lynch. So you would imagine that Murray and Butts obviously retain their positions, and we retain that structure. The only other place I can see Josh coming in is maybe giving Jake Kelly a spell, because Jake has done some good defensive work this year, but he's certainly limited, I guess, and I'm sure the club don't see it that way. But it makes me wonder whether there's a case to be made for maybe Josh coming in for Jake Kelly. Not that I think it'll happen.
No, I don't think it'll happen. But I think that it's almost like you've got these guys really pushing hard up from underneath, and you can't just deny them, forever. And so they're going to have to find a spot for Josh Worrell at some point. I mean, at least Will Hamill had a lot of games, but Josh needs to. The other one I want to talk to you about, Fiend, which really upsets me and really grinds my gears, is Ronan O'Connor. Grinds my gears. There's a kid who was in form. He played 3 great games in the Sandful. He gets picked against West Coast. He gets 53% of game time, so he plays half a game.
Yep.
Then the following week, he gets made the substitute. Yep. No injuries, no game. So suddenly, we've got a kid who was in great form, and he's played half a game in 3 weeks. By the time we get to Saturday, he will have played half a game in 3 weeks.
Yeah,
I just think that's really. I don't understand that kind of management, and I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I agree totally, Peter. I don't see the point, and our club is guilty of doing this at times. We had the situation with Ben Davis previously, and I didn't actually think Ben looked too bad running off halfback on the weekend, but Ronan deserved a run, I think, and aside from anything else, it's poor player management. As you say, half a game in 3 weeks. He was in a good vein of form, and now you're basically asking, wherever he plays next week, whether it be in the AFL or the SANFL team, you're asking him to continue that form on the back of bugger all work, really. So, I guess,
that one.
Look, David McKay, I think he justified his selection, although at the time I was livid like most of us, but I don't think you could fault David McKay's effort during the season. But it's very difficult to understand selection this year, because we had that period of time where we appeared to be playing lopsided, undersized in defence and oversized in attack. And we persisted with that for 4 weeks. Now we've got O'Connor coming in for a WA homecoming, and then shunted back out again straight away. My argument with DMAC's selection over, say, Will Hamill or Ronan O'Connor is, what are we trying to achieve this year? Surely we can't be trying to achieve a final spot. And if we're not trying to achieve a final spot, then surely the objective is development. Wouldn't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And so you've got this kind of this competing interest of DMAC having played a good game, and the game that he played warrants his retention.
Yeah.
But then, at the moment, he's taking up a wing half-back spot.
Yeah.
And you've got Will Hamill running around smashing the Sandful. And he won't get set that on the back of that performance on Saturday, that DMAC wouldn't. That'll keep him in for the next 3 to 4 games at least.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so there's no movement.
No, and it's not just O'Connor. I mean, Luke Pedler made his return last week. We've got Cook back there as well. We've got Borlase, who's not playing badly. We've got Worrell, who's been a bit stiff. There's some blokes that we need to get some games into that don't really look like they're going to get a look in. I mean, let's be brutally honest. I think James Rowe and Ned McHenry have benefited from the fact that Lachlan Murphy's not in the team, because I think we were just one too many in that slot, if you know what I mean. And we've seen Ned and Jimmy blossom in the last fortnight. And no one wishes the injury that Lachlan Murphy got on him, but it just goes to show with the way we structure up, that it can have a real impact. The other knock-on effect of selection this week was, of course, the rejuvenation of Tom Diday. Having Nick Murray in the team.
We talked about that.
Yeah. And I mean, if Joe Bloggs on a bloody podcast can see it, surely the coaches can, which means that their objectives are different and they're difficult to decipher at the moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, very tricky. It'll be unchanged.
Well, yeah, I was just about to say the same. I think we'll be unchanged, barring any late mishaps. Now, we've got 1990 with his hand up patiently in the audience, so we'll bring you in, 1990. How you going, mate? Come right in.
I'm well, Phoenix. How are you, Pete?
Yeah, good, mate.
I just thought I'd call in to talk about selection because I think, that's pretty much the key thing we've got going into this week. Just with the sample, guys, you talked about the defenders had the strongest performance. We had Hamill, McPherson. I agree with what Phoenix was saying about a bit confusing with what is our overall strategy over the last month. I feel like we've got competing departments within the club that are a little bit misaligned as to what are we actually trying to achieve, because we've got this rebuild element where we've drafted all these guys that are supposedly highly talented, and we drafted them for a reason, was to take over from the guys that didn't perform over the last 2 or 3 years. I know Kelly and David McKay are performing quite well right now, and they're quite sturdy and reliable, or to an extent, I suppose. But at the end of the day, players like Will Hamill and Josh Worrell are the talented versions of those two players. And for the right now, it's not a major issue. But I think as we go over time, over the next 12 months, we really need to prioritise blokes like Worrell and Hamill in the first instance, even if it's just as a 2 or 3 game block. I just think we need to get gains into them.
Well, I mean, you watch the SNFL 1990 and you think, well, what are they going to learn out of playing that level? Because, I mean, it's a completely different game. Pete's just dropped off again. A completely different play style. You've got top-ups in there who don't have the same level of skills. They're not benefiting. So, look, it's a difficult one at the moment. I feel like it was the young guys that actually initiated our competitiveness against Melbourne. Certainly experience helped at key moments, aka Tex. But it was the young blokes that really provided the energy and the impetus to get us in the game and get us around it. So, interesting over the next couple of weeks.
Now. I think we've gotten back to the right structure now. I think it's quite clear in the way that the ball has moved for us over the last 2 weeks that we've got the right structure now.
Yeah.
And we're actually able to compete with, West Coast and Melbourne are 2 very good sides. And we've been able to match them for the most part.
Agreed.
So we've got the structure. I just think we've just got to work on having the structure, but also having an eye on the future, because we're not winning the premiership this year, and really we should be aiming for 2 or 3 years' time. And these guys are going to be the key to us getting that real drive into the next 24, 36 months. I heard you mention Lockie Murphy injury. I think it's quite clear that our ball movement from wing to half forward, I mean, you don't want to wish injury on anyone, but you could see that our ball movement is light years ahead of where it was 3 or 4 weeks ago through that period of the ground.
Yeah, and that's through blokes like Ned offering options, providing options. There was a concerted effort to change. Yeah. 1990, I'm going to have to cut you short, mate, because we want to spend a little bit of time talking about Matty Roberts. But thanks, as always, for supporting us on the Crowcast and coming on. And we may have a minute or two at the end for people if they want to come on. But in the meantime, Peter, just before we crack into Matty, there is one last thing that we need to discuss very, very quickly, and that's obviously whether the game's going to be played in Melbourne, given the COVID situation.
There is I'd say every chance that they end up starting to get teams out of Melbourne in the next couple of days, because I reckon it will only need maybe 4 or 5 new cases in the next day or two, and the AFL will be terrified.
Agreed.
And they'll be moving games, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think
so. Watch this
50-50.
space, but at a very minimum, no crowds. There'll be no crowds at that game. You can get set on that right now. And the only question that will remain is whether they actually even play in Melbourne.
Yeah, agreed. All right, now, big drum roll. I haven't done an intro for you, mate, but I'm sure you don't need it. Matty Roberts, second in our series on the SA draft class for 2021, and has really hit the ground running this season, hasn't he, mate?
I've watched him, as you know. I've been a big fan of his, and when we first started even talking about doing this segment earlier in the year, you'll know that he was one that I brought up straight away as a really interesting topic. And the reason for the listeners, the reason why I've taken such an interest in Matty is that I'm just being realistic about our hit zone, and we'd all love Jason, of course, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Horn's going to go. He's going to go one, and we're just not going to get there. You can see, another nail in the Horn coffin on Saturday night, but none of us are complaining, of course. So we've got to be realistic about our hit zone, and so that's why I've taken such an interest in Matthew Roberts. Now, his pedigree, Fane, he played in an A-grade premiership for Langhorne Creek when he was 14 years old.
Yeah.
So he's a strong young man, and I went out. Last Saturday, as you know, I went out to see St Peter's play Sacred Heart in what was an absolutely cracking match down at Sacred Heart. And the Hearts won by 7 points. Matty Roberts played that day. It was a real privilege to be so close and to be able to watch him play up so closely. I should have paid money for it. It was an absolute exhibition to see his run and his carry, and in particular his booming left foot kick. The kid has a cannon of a left foot kick. And he just has a really, really good sort of. He'll win possession. He's a real give and go, and he'll get himself on the outside, and then and that's why if you look through his stats, he's just a major inside 50 contributor to the stat sheet, and he gets himself out on his own, and he does not dink around with the ball, Fiend. He does not He doesn't chippy zigzag.
No.
Knock up the possession. He kicks it long.
Yeah,
anything around 60 metres and he's shooting for goal.
Yeah, I've got some vision going at the moment on the TV screen there, and he's a well-defined young man already. He's got some good upper body definition, good broad shoulders. He's a strong lad, as you said. He can get his own ball, but he's also equally dangerous, as you mentioned, on the outside, Peter, and he can hit the scoreboard as well.
His overhead marking and look, his kicking is an absolute thing of beauty. So, he won this. He was runner-up in the schools medal as a year 11 last year. He's under 16 state team. He'll be obviously front and centre in the under 18, under 19 state team this year.
Yeah,
he is. Look, he just gives you a bit of everything, and that's what I love about Matt, is that he just gives you a bit of everything. He's a high character kid as well. There was, as an example, in the last quarter in that game that I watched, that scores were tied. It was really, really tense moment in the game. He'd set up a beautiful bit of play. All he needed to do, he kept running. All he needed to do was his teammate to mark the ball and give him a handball, and he would have, from the wing, I shit you not, he would have just about kicked a goal because there was no one in front of him. He would have had bounces. That would have put him in front. Of course, what happened is a St Peter's player dropped the mark, Sacred Heart cleared and kicked a goal, and then bang, the siren goes. Now,
bloody St Peter's,
the guy. Oh yeah, he's there with his hands on his knees. What do you reckon Roberts does? He goes straight after. He used to go straight after him, and he puts his arm around him, and he talks to him, and he talks him through it, and pats him on the back, and just worry about the next time. And so he's just a high character kid. He's a real team man. He's aggressive, like he was getting into some of the other opposition players. He's aggressive, he's angry, and he plays hard physical football. I think that the best way to describe him, Fane, is he just gives us a little bit of everything. He gives us the outside run. He's quick enough. He's not Cozzy Pickett, but he's quick enough, and he's got a nice long stride, and he uses the ball beautifully.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've got any questions about Matty, or if any of the listeners got any questions about Matty, but he's a kid I've looked at very, very closely, and none of the so a lot of the pundits now have got him right up around that top 5 kind of pick. So I think that he's going to be available, I reckon, for us.
Yeah.
Unless he really smokes the carnival, which is quite possible.
Yeah.
But he is one that we should be looking at, I think.
Yeah. So just his stats, he's 183 or listed as 183 and 81. He's probably a little bit bigger than that now. Midfield forward, he's averaging in the 18s, he's averaging 32 disposals, 23 kicks, 9 handballs, 8.3 marks, 7.7 tackles, 6.3 clearances, 7.7 inside 50s, 4 rebound 50s, and averaging 1.7 goals in his 3 games. So that's a stat sheet. That is a stat sheet. And of course, he went up, got the promotion to the first and picked up 14 or 15 posies in his debut for the South League team as well, and didn't look out of place either, did he?
No, and I think that I'm really glad you brought those stats up, Fane, because what that does, it just backs up what I said about the fact that he's just a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
He's got a massive engine, honestly, even now, and he will cover the ground. He'll cover defence. His work rate is phenomenal, and he'll just work up and down the ground, and he'll start something from defence. He'll rebound 50, and he'll just keep going, and he'll create, and he'll keep running, and then he'll end up inside 50. It's just phenomenal. Yeah. So has he got the star power impact of Horn? No. Is he a potential All-Australian? Absolutely, no question at all. And I think going back to that comparison you made with Walsh is probably not a bad one.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe a little bit more damaging by foot than Walsh. I was looking at some of his highlights over the last couple of days. Walsh is a good clean disposer of the ball, but I feel like Matty Roberts can really break a line and get some depth with his kicks and really gain territory on that left side. And look, any team that picks up Matthew Roberts is going to have a serious player on their list as a consequence. Does he fit? Yes, we do. Does he fit what we need, Peter? I mean, I know first round of the draft, it's always about best available talent. And we'll uncover some other talent as we go through this series during the course of the season. Does he in the Crows midfield of the future? Is it Matthew Roberts, Luke Pedler, Sam Berry, Ben Keys? Is that too workmanlike, or can we get Matty on the outside a bit more and turn him into that silk?
Well, I honestly think you could, because I mean, obviously he can win his own ball, and you have to be able to win your own ball to play AFL. So he can win his own ball. He'll go. Yeah. He'll go when it's his turn. Don't worry about that, and he'll go hard. But yes, he can be that outside silk that we need. And now that I've seen with my own eyes that left foot kick is penetrating. And he gets within 55 metres from goal, shut the gate, he's having a shot for goal, and he's making it easy. Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you've got the highlights package from his under-18s game where he kicked a goal from inside the centre square at Norwood Oval.
I've been running the highlights as we've been talking, so I'll just
I'm not sure if you've got that one, but yeah, he was inside the centre square. I think it was at Norwood, or it might have been at Noarlunga. He was inside the centre square, and he's kicked a goal on the run. So he has got a booming left foot kick. Yeah. And I just think he's a real meters gained. So he's, if you get him on the outside, he is going to break. He's going to run you 15 sort of meters, and then he's going to kick you 50. He can be very, very damaging, but he uses the ball very well. He's a very accurate kick for goal, and that leg is a weapon, Fane. Yeah. And if you compare him to sort of like an M Crouch who just sort of, chips it around. I mean, obviously there will be a certain amount of that within the structure of the coach wants in terms of, do you want to switch play or whatever. Yeah. But if he's allowed free to go direct, he will kick the ball long and strong.
Yeah. Death, thanks very much, mate. See, this is the type of stuff I have to deal with, Pete. Death in the chat saying, saw me on YouTube and I've got a face for radio. Well, stuff you, mate.
Love it.
Come on the chat and tell me that. No, look, and Vardy's just asked me to zoom that in, so I have zoomed that in a little bit. So you'd think that he's top 3 or 4 in the draft. So, and look, realistically, St Kilda are now vying for a bottom 3 spot, in my opinion, along with the Suns and Hawthorn and North Melbourne.
Collingwood.
So we could, and Collingwood. So we could, end up with 5 or 6. Are we still in danger of perhaps missing out on not only Jason Horn but also Matty?
Yeah, I really do. I do believe, and we'll know a lot more after the champs, but I genuinely think that we're at risk of missing out on Matt. I really struggle to see Matt going anything, worse than sort of 5. Then that's just at the moment. But you've seen his number. I mean, he's playing league football now. So St Peter's playing Ross Trevor this Saturday, so I'll be out there and I'll be hoping that we snag him back for that game. I don't think we'll release him for that game. But, he everybody's talking about him sort of around about that sort of 5, 6 sort of mark. Yeah. And once he goes to the champs theme, honestly, when he goes back to playing under 18s, you've seen his stats, same as Horn.
Yeah.
South Australia are a really good chance of winning those champs because they are going to absolutely dominate those champs because you've seen what they've done at the under 18 level.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, the match in the 18s that Matty played before he made his debut, I mean, he just destroyed that level. He's far too good for that level now. You're right. You get him into a situation where he's showcased in the champs, and we're in a bit of strife. So anyway,
so we need to be around. I mean, I think I said to you a few weeks ago when we first started talking about this. We need to be really careful, otherwise we're going to miss out on him as well. Look, there's going to be a good midfielder there for us, and don't forget, I'm unashamedly my brief is only looking at South Australian kids.
Yeah,
and I've got no doubt there'll be somebody good around our pick, but certainly Matty Roberts is around about our hit zone.
Yeah. Okay. So if there's anyone in the chat that has an opinion on that, or opinion on drafting or our squad in general, now's the time because we're just about out of time. We're a bit over time this week, actually. But look, my final thoughts are, Pete, quite honestly, that Matt Roberts is probably as worth trying to work your way up the draft to get him as Jason Horn, in my opinion. They're different players. Yep. They offer you something different, but in their category, in their respective categories, they're both standouts. And if Jason's out of reach and Matt's pegged as a top 5, and we need to shift up a couple of spots in the draft to get him, I'd be just as much in favour of the club doing that as I would them doing it for Jason Horn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the great thing that those two boys have got in, the one absolute thing that they've got in common, in my view, is that they will be both ready to go round 1.
Yeah, I agree. Well, as I mentioned earlier, Matty Roberts is filled out. He's broad across his shoulders. He looks strong. He looks fit. He doesn't get knocked off the ball terribly much. And I agree with you. He's a Sam Berry type. He'll hit the ground running. Not Sam Berry in terms of his style, but in terms of his readiness for AFL footy. I agree. So very interesting. Now, before we finish up, Peter, because I know the pumpkin is cooking away nicely for you there, who are we lining up next week for our SA Draft Class chat?
We're going to have a look at Arlo Draper, and we're going to get the three-headed monster from South Adelaide out the way, because Arlo is yet another 184 centimetre goal kicking midfielder from the Panthers. It's unbelievable. They've got these 3 kids. Arlo hasn't He hasn't got the plaudits, I don't think, of those two, but he's still very much in the conversation for that sort of, I think, 8 to 15 kind of
8
range.
to 15. Yeah, agree.
He's no slouch. He's no slouch, Arlo. And there's a lot of love for him amongst the watchers. There's a lot of love for Arlo out there, and he's just plying his trade away, being the best South Adelaide under-18 player at the moment because those two other boys aren't there.
Yeah.
So he's just quietly playing, and he's another one that we're going to see in the champs. So
I was going to say he's the one that I'm really interested in watching in the champs because he's, as you mentioned, he's kind of playing second. Well, he has been playing second or third fiddle to those other two lads, and it's been released now. But to get him in the champs, I'm interested to see where they play him, and interested to see how he goes against at that level. It'll be very interesting. Yep. Looking forward to that discussion, Peter. And
indeed, I'll do a bit of work through the week, and we'll have a look at him.
Very good. Now, just before we go, Death has put his hand up, and I'm not going to ignore that because previous comments made, slanderous comments. Death is coming. How you going?
Can
mate?
You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. All right.
Fantastic. Because last time I tried to talk to you, my microphone died, and now we can hear clearly through the keyboard. So fantastic. No, Phoenix, I must say you do a great job, mate. I appreciate what you do because I'm based up in Brisbane. Yeah. And I happened to be on YouTube, and I saw your face on YouTube, and they said you're live now. So I thought, got to switch over, got to listen to what you got to say. So fantastic.
You're a good man. You're a good man. And look, I'm under no illusions, Death, about my rugged good looks. But it's I'm not going to sit in a hot tub in my Speedos like the girls on Twitch. We're all about we're all about content here, mate. So maybe on the final ever Crowcast I might do that just to make sure no one ever looks at us ever again. But in the meantime, that's not happening, and I can assure you.
It was so funny, Phoenix, because when I was on YouTube, they had the hard look. You had that angry look.
Oh, yeah,
I didn't realise. Live now, Phoenix is on, so I had to switch over and say g'day. And I appreciate everything you guys do. And Pete, you guys really say rational things. And it's just good to get the updates because we get nothing up here in Brisbane. So what you guys keep us updated on, I really appreciate it. Because I've got no idea who's coming into seconds. And I think PJ Crozy, I think he's up here or someone else is. But
J-Mac's up there too.
J-Mac, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
No, it's good to have you along, mate. We really appreciate it. And it's great to know there's people. So I sometimes think it's amazing that you don't really realise that there's people sort of around the country. I think we might even have a few overseas people, Fiend. We used to. Have a listen as well. It's quite amazing when you think about it.
Yeah.
Isn't technology great?
It is great. And look, without harping on about it, we started the Crowcast, didn't we, way back in 2015 because of the dearth of coverage in the media for the Adelaide Crows, even in South Australia. It was just, the canned Victorian crap. And that's why we started this off, and it's great to hear that people are getting some value out of it. Thanks, Death. I'll overlook your minor snide remark.
You're a handsome man, Phoenix. You're a handsome man.
Yeah. I'll hit you up later in DMs. I'll slide into your DMs, mate. We'll work something out.
No worries. Right, thank you. Thanks for the chat. On you. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Pete, I reckon with that rather unnerving thing, we better call it a night. What do you think?
Let's do it. Let's call it a night.
All right. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube and maybe Twitch. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anyone on Twitch tonight. Don't forget, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast, or you can just hit I think there's a PayPal button on the website, aflcrowcast.com, that you can click and give us a couple of bucks. If you're a Discord member, don't forget about the suggestion box channel. There's a bit of love going on in there for certain topics, so get around it. Give me your suggestions. We're very keen to make sure that we give you guys what you want. If you're listening on demand, either on YouTube or through an audio file, and you're not on Discord yet, get around us on Discord. It's a great community that we're building here. We're up to 160 members, which is just unbelievable. It blows my mind. And it's good banter, good solid footy talk, all about the Crows. If you need some tips on how to get on Discord, go to our YouTube channel. There's a video there telling you how to do it. Peter, lovely talking to you again, mate, and everyone else. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on Sunday for the Wrap Show. In the meantime, take care. Good night.